Hey guys, we're trying again. I reset my internet, so I'm trying to see if it works a little better for you. So I'm gonna give you a minute to get back on, and if from there, I'll just talk to myself if I need to. Sorry about the internet. It feels like it's been a lot more obnoxious recently, and I've heard some people have issues with internet after a year. Like you have to drive the internet people crazy. I don't know. Maybe it's a conspiracy. We were talking about King Ahaz, and I was asking you guys to write in your notes, and when you have time to read 2 Kings 16 or 2 Chronicles 28, and or both of those give you some really excellent insight. Yay, people are coming on. Hi, Diana. Um, I'm just doing a quick recap of those people that are joining. Hey, Katie. Um, so if you're joining me on this second live video, let me know if it's working okay. I reset my internet, so hopefully it will work better for you this time. But just to give everybody a little recap, everyone needs to read 2 Kings 16 and 2 Chronicles 28 when you have a chance. This gives you such great background into what's happening during the time of Isaiah, culturally, and so in the country, or really the kingdom of Israel. Yay, it's working better. But also what's happening in the heart of King Ahaz as well. So I'm going to go really quick over my recap, but because I'm going to have you guys just go ahead and read the verses in chapter 16. But long story short, King Ahaz is a bad guy. Verse 2 says in 2 Kings 16 that he was 20 years old when he began to reign. He reigned 16 years, so he died pretty young at 36. And that's also confirmed in 2 Chronicles 28. He didn't listen to God. And we talked about also that he did all these other things, like made his sons participate in these religious sacrifices and things like that. Rituals. He allied himself and his country with Assyria, which was an enemy of God. He gave away God's offerings as his own. So he did a lot of bad stuff. So basically, like I said, when y'all have a second, read those verses because they're really good, and they're good at giving you a little bit of insight into what's happening in Isaiah. I asked you in the other video, if you were joining me, how you felt when you were reading Isaiah this week, if you felt really good, if it's feeling better, if you're still really overwhelmed. If you didn't answer me in the other video, you could answer me here. Just let me know how you feel. And I was honest with you guys and told you I was pretty overwhelmed the first couple chapters, but by 4 I was feeling better. So let's dig in here for just a minute. When we start in Isaiah 1, really the first couple chapters were really, it feels like a punch in the gut, doesn't it? There's a lot of heavy reading material when we get into Isaiah. There's a lot of talk of judgment. There's a lot of talk of disobedience, of rebellion, and all these things. So in this section, it's hard to read, let's be honest. And I think that's why maybe the first couple days I was feeling really overwhelmed, thinking, oh my goodness, I don't even understand all these alliterations and all these things. Just reading y'all's comments. Good. I agree with you, Diana. I'm the same way. So that's why I felt like the catch-up days would be really helpful. So I'm glad that we put those in. I actually like to use catch-up days as well to be able to get ahead. So if you get to those days, like the day that we had chapter 7 and 8, I couldn't get to chapter 8. I had so much that I had gotten from 7. I was writing and my hand was hurting, like I was writing so much. So I just didn't get to 8 on that day, and that's okay. So you are welcome, Kristen. So I'm glad you guys are enjoying the catch-up days. I would tell you, Diana, to just do what I did if you can. Take the easy days to get ahead if you can. And so that way when you get to those days that have 2 chapters that seem tough, then for you feel like, okay, I'm a little ahead, so this is good. Let's see if you can do that. All right. So jumping into Isaiah 1, I don't want to talk a whole lot about these first 2 chapters because Kristen did a really good job with her commentary with her talk on these different things, what's going on. She jumped on a couple days, which was really helpful. I know you guys enjoyed that. I enjoyed that. So like I said, get a lot of background to this story. Make sure you start there. And I'm not saying that's the magic spray that's not going to make it feel overwhelming, but it will help a lot. It really does help a lot. So I began to write down the themes of each of the chapters, which was really kind of fun for me and interesting. Like chapter 1 feels a bit hopeless, doesn't it? There's a lot of judgment. There's a lot of this pleading from God. The people of Judah are in a bad situation, right? The king's not doing what he's supposed to be doing. The people aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing. These are supposed to be the children of God, and they've completely forgotten about him. So again, it's depressing. And like we have mentioned before, God is just. He has to judge sin. We want him to do that because we always want right to win. So judgment's coming. But in chapters 2 and 3, really actually in chapter 1 as well, remember we mentioned 1:18 says, "Come now, let us reason together, says the Lord. Though your sins are like scarlet, they shall be white as snow. Though they are red like crimson, they shall become like wool." So, and then verse 19 says, "If you're willing and obedient, you shall eat the good of the land." So verses 17 through 19 really are special. In the smack middle of all this hopelessness and sadness and judgment and not anger, but I think a bit of frustration. The Lord is pleading with them to do what's right and to come back to himself, and he's kind of pushing him to himself. Chapters 2 and 3 felt a little more hopeful. There's a lot of instruction in these chapters, and from the Lord. Particularly, I highlighted verse number 5. "O house of Jacob, come, let us walk in the light of the Lord." So easy, not very many words, but so simple. But what a instruction, right? There's a lot that goes into walking in the light of the Lord, and always being God's mirror image and doing what's right for him in his sight. Chapters 4 and 5, we're starting to again see Jesus, see the Messiah, this promise of someone coming. I loved reading. I think that's why I really liked chapters 4 and 5, because things felt a little bit more chewable for me, and it felt more hopeful. So I think, just really happy to see those things. And I can't imagine but feel that the Israelites, the people of Judah, must have felt the same way. They were caught in their sin, and I'm sure it felt like drowning. And then we're going to see in the next couple of chapters, they have an enemy coming upon them. Their brothers up to the north, the northern kingdom of Israel, has already been overtaken. So I'm sure it was a very fearful time. And yet here the Lord's saying, giving them hope, which is so special. I'm talking quick because I don't want to, I don't know how long my throat's going to last, my voice is going to last. So if you want to jump in, you're welcome to. And I'm going to ask you guys too, what you guys are thinking as well. Excuse me. I noticed in chapter 6, there's kind of this commission or calling where Isaiah sees a vision of the Lord, which is really special to be reminded of his holiness. So special in that area. And then I loved verse 6. I think it's 6 and 7. Where it says, "Then one of the seraphim flew to me, having in his hand a burning coal that he had taken with tongs from the altar. And he touched my mouth and said, 'Behold, this has touched your lips. Your guilt is taken away and your sin atoned for.'" A good reminder there that Isaiah didn't do anything to receive that grace. I put the word grace next to those verses there, which was really special. And then all throughout this section, I wrote a lot of cross-references, anything that Kristen mentioned, anything that I found in the commentaries and researched. I really like those verses too, Nita. Like in verses number 10 and 11, I wrote down John 12, 36 through 43, which is basically, if I remember right, it's talking about Jesus being right in front of the Jews and them not knowing who he was, and which is fulfilling prophecy. And that's pretty special to make a note of. So if you're really wanting to get into cross-referencing, I'm trying to give you guys the ones that I've caught. And then, like I said, of course, Kristen gives you a lot as well. And if you read any commentaries, they give you some as well. Yeah. I'm looking here. Yeah, I wrote Isaiah sees Jesus and prophesies his earthly time. So you'll see a lot of similarities in John, in John 12, 36 through 43. I was in Matthew. I must be feeling foggy. Yeah, it's perfect. Because in John, John actually states Isaiah's prophecy there. So that's a really good cross-reference. Lord, who has believed what he heard from us, and to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? Therefore they could not believe. For again, Isaiah said, he has blinded their eyes and hardened their hearts, lest they see with their eyes and understand with their heart and turn, and I would heal them. And then verse 41 says, Isaiah said these things because he saw his glory and spoke of him. Nevertheless, many, even of the authorities, believed in him, but for fear of the Pharisees, they did not confess it, so they would not be put out of the synagogue. Which I find to be so interesting, because the Pharisees were supposed to be the most learned men of the Jewish culture. They would have memorized, sections, really the entire, the first 4 books of the Bible, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, the first 5 books of the Bible, they would have had memorized. They would have been able to elaborate on anything out of the Old Testament. They knew their law. They knew these prophecies. And it's just so interesting that their eyes were blinded, like Isaiah says here. And I just wonder, if it ever clicked with them that they were part of who he was talking about there. So interesting. Yes, I love cross-referencing as well. It's good to make scripture come alive. 7 and 8 gives you a lot of story. So in that section, don't get overwhelmed. Like I said, that was a really good place for me to go back to 2 Kings 16 and just kind of read what's going on. I think that was really helpful to know what's happening in that narrative. And there's a lot of history there. And then again, chapter 9, one of the most famous passages in all of the Bible, speaking of the Messiah. I have a ton of pink. You'll see in mine, I've got half of the entire page in a pink highlighter. And again, I love that when we get in Isaiah, every time I start to feel overwhelmed, the Lord blesses me with something really big. So if I could give you guys any encouragement, it's to continue to dig. Kristen Barkjell had a really good question today about the remnant, and Kristen Schmucker had already answered that question. She must have been mind reading today to help you guys understand the remnant and make sure that you knew what that was talking about. So I did want to touch on it really quick so you're aware of what's going on there. You're going to see in, I want to make sure I'm saying the right thing, but I believe it's in chapter 10. Yes. In chapter 10, where we're reading about the remnant, this kind of small group of people that the Lord is going to use to set up his kingdom. And it's important that you note there that that's not us. That's the Jewish race. Basically, it's a promise to the Jewish people that he'll never destroy them. And that's pretty special, because if you guys watch any news, if you keep up with any political talk, or you watch your C-SPAN ever, it feels like the Middle East hates the Jews. And that's not new. You can read, of course, we know about Nazi Germany, what happened, but this happened in tons of other places all around the world if you read your history books. But particularly in the Middle East, if you did the study on Daughters of Grace that we did a couple months ago, we learned about Hagar and Sarah, and we learned that the Palestinian people, so the other Middle Easterners and the Jews, have always been kind of at each other's throats, and that was from the beginning of the Bible. God had already mentioned that relationship, or lack thereof, back in Genesis. So there's always been enemies of God's people, always, and many, many people throughout history have tried to exterminate Jews and have tried to get rid of the Israeli people, and the Bible tells us that that will never happen. That's his promise to those people. So again, Kristen, I like that Kristen reminded us of that. That's not us. It's not applicable to us in that way. However, it can be really encouraging to us to realize that God keeps his promises to his people just like he keeps his promises to us, even though we're not Jews necessarily, although some of you may be. Even if you're a Gentile, even if you're not of Jewish descent, God still loves you, and as one of his children, he's going to keep his promises to you. So that's still an encouraging thing. What we would call those people, there are still Jews today that do believe in Jesus, and that's basically the difference. I guess the biggest difference, I don't want to get into theology between Orthodox Jews and Hasidic Jews and Messianic Jews and all these things. But one of the biggest issues is that there are Jews that believe that the Messiah has not come yet. Or that they believe that there were other people that were the Messiah. And then the Messianic Jews would be Jewish people who believe that Jesus was the Messiah, that he has already come. So I hope that helps just a little bit to understand what the remnant is. They are going to be a small group of people. You noticed the farther into the Bible you get, particularly in the Gospels, you're going to see a lot of Jews reject Jesus and reject who he is. And I love that God already knew that, and that he still chose to give this promise way back in Isaiah, that he was still going to keep his people safe, and that he was eventually going to set up his final kingdom with that remnant of people. So that's pretty special. I wanted to make sure you guys caught that today. So I don't want to take credit for that. Kristen gave us a really good article on it, and then kind of helped me to I guess think over my thoughts as well. So the remnant is Israel. The remnant is the Jewish race. So I wanted to give you guys just a minute here at the end to say anything. If you have a special chapter, a chapter that you've really enjoyed so far, or if you have any questions about anything that you've read so far, I would love to hear from you, and I'd love to have you just comment below. I don't want you to feel like I'm putting you on the spot, but like I said, I don't have a lot of time to explain tonight just because of my voice, which probably if I'm feeling better in the next few days, I may do an extra video for you, just because I feel bad that I'm not giving you all these things. But the margins of my Bible in Isaiah are filling up, and I love to see that when I go through a study. And a Be Still journal is also filling up as well. So that's a happy thing. That means we're learning and we're growing. So I hope that you're learning and you're growing as well. So any questions from you guys about what you have read? There's a lot of use of metaphors and alliterations in Isaiah. So like I said, it's so good to know your history and your background. So if something doesn't make sense to you, I'd really encourage you to write it down, and then like we mentioned before, use some resources to look it up. It may make a ton more sense if you can figure out the context of that. You have to remember that this book was written a long time ago, so the world and life has changed, and so some things made a lot more sense to this time period that maybe doesn't make quite as much sense to us. And that doesn't mean your translation is bad. That doesn't mean that the Bible is irrelevant. That just means that you have to do a little bit more digging, which you're finding out. Oh, perfect timing, Diana. Then I hope you got, it sounds like you got another journal, so it's perfect. Good. I hope you guys were able to take advantage of that. I looked today, and I know I saw at least one Be Still journal was sold out of the Slightly Imperfect, but if you haven't had a chance to go on and look at the warehouse sale, there's a whole tab dedicated to it. There's still some things on there, so if you want to get something at least half off or more, this is a perfect time of year to grab something. Some of the stuff is not Slightly Imperfect. Some of it's just retiring, so there's nothing wrong with it. It's just we're not restocking it in the shop, which is pretty cool. Okay, I am not seeing any questions, and so I want to leave you guys really with that thought of the remnant, because I love that idea of how God keeps his promises. Yes, Karen, me too. And I love what the Lord's teaching me in Isaiah, as far as he's encouraging me that I have, like I said before, I may have said it in the last video, now I can't remember. But that I need to get idols out of my life. I need to get those high places out of my life, just like the rulers of the kingdom of Israel back in 2 Kings needed to do, just like Ahaz needed to do. And also, I am reminded that God is so merciful. Don't ever believe that lie, that God is hateful or mean or angry all the time. I can't imagine the things he knows the things he's known for years, the sins we were going to commit, what we were going to do with the choice that he gave us, and yet still decided to give us his son. That's an incredible thought, to think that way. Diana, I believe the clear coffee mug is in next month's surprise box. So it's not around yet. It actually hasn't released yet. You still have a few days to get one if you want. So as long as you sign up for a surprise box subscription before, well, February 1st is your last day to do it, you'll get one for sure. If something goes in the shop afterwards, it's always kind of iffy. It depends on how many surprise boxes we sell. It depends on the demand on the product. It depends on if we have the stock available. So the only way to guarantee you get that is to get that surprise box subscription by February 1st. But you can cancel your subscription at any time. So you could just get February if you wanted to. Good question. Good. I'm glad you feel better. Yep. Don't stress out, Tina. You'll catch up. I think, like I said before, I encourage Diana with this as well, but honestly, just try and get ahead when you can. If you can, don't worry about it. But this is a heavy book, and that's the reason why Kristen and I put the extra days in to help you catch up, because it's a heavy book, and I don't want you to feel like you're just skimming the surface and just trying to check off days, because that's not why we're here. We're here to learn, and we're here to let the Lord speak to us. So, as always, let me know if you guys have any questions or if you need anything from me. And like I said, hopefully I'll be feeling a little better in the next couple days, and I'll try and do an extra video for you guys. So we'll talk a little bit more about Isaiah in a few days. All right, see ya. Have a good night.